One thing is I don't overthink as much. A lot of things are intuitive with my body at this point of when to pull back and when to kind of go forward. It is so relieving to not have to consistently be analyzing. Where am I at? What's my heart rate? Am I able to do this? What are the consequences going to be? And this is probably the first time in my life that I've not had that. The past couple of years leading up to finding CFS recovery, I was really hopeless. And I started getting to the point where I started becoming scared of hope and scared of solutions because I didn't know, honestly, what I was going to do or where I was going to be if one more thing let me down, or if I saw other people getting better from things that I just couldn't do because of my history. And I guess what I would say is that hope is a positive thing. You know, hope doesn't have to be scary. It can lead to something, and it can lead to things that you can't even imagine.
How's it going, guys? Miguel here from CFS Recovery. In this video, we have Ariel, and she has been doing absolutely amazing on her recovery journey. She's been in the Recovery Jumpstart program for a handful of months now, and from the time she came in to where she is now, it's been absolutely remarkable to see, to witness, to be a part of. And I wanted to bring her on here just to share with you guys what is possible, you know, when you get on the right track. And as somebody who's been through so many things in the past and tried so many different things, she's now finally gaining traction, but I don't want to spoil it. I'll let her share that in a little bit here, but glad to have you here, Ariel. Why don't you quickly introduce yourself?
I'm Ariel. I am from Michigan, and I'm happy to be here.
We're excited to have you. So maybe take us back, you know, on your journey with CFS or this hypersensitive nervous system issue. When did this all begin? It's been happening most of your life, right?
Yeah, I've definitely had symptoms from a young age. I went through, I had a lot of complex trauma in my history. And the first time I remember having a lot of symptoms is around age 6 or 7. I just got sick so often when I was a kid. And I would end up with, like tonsil issues. I always had ear infections. And I remember going to doctors when I was really, really young, trying to figure out why I could just never keep my energy level up. And it was always a problem. I was always sick with something. And then kind of, I went through some really traumatic things and kind of fast forward. I remember around the age when I was actually diagnosed, I was around the age of 10 or 11. I was diagnosed with ADHD. And then I was also diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome, which at the time they had described as a mental illness, that essentially just meant that I'm fatigued. So, that's around the time that it started being treated like an official issue. But it wasn't seen as like a huge deal. It was kind of just like, we think she has ADHD and also chronic fatigue along with that. But that's when I was put on medication.
Wow. And what age were you when you said that happened?
When that happened, I was around 10 or 11 when I got like formally diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome.
Yeah. Wow. So quite a long time. And then how old are you right now again?
I'm 30.
30. That's right. So you've had it for, I mean, when you came into the program, you've been dealing with it for 19, 20 years. Mm-hmm. So when they told you it was chronic fatigue syndrome, because you actually had the diagnosis, what was that like? Did they offer any solutions for you, or was it kind of just like cope with it, go home, get some rest? What did they say?
They told me to stop stressing out, you know, and like, I was like 10 or 11. So that kind of went over my head. At the time, there were a lot of other things going on. The chronic fatigue syndrome was kind of the least of my concerns. I had a lot of complex trauma I was dealing with. I was dealing with some behavioral issues with ADHD when I was a kid. And they kind of just lumped the chronic fatigue syndrome in there like, just like an add-on. Just like, well, of course she has chronic fatigue syndrome with all these other things going on, but just get some rest, try not to stress out, and, you know, hopefully this will resolve itself. When I was put on the stimulants that I was on, they said, you know, hopefully this will just take care of it.
Yeah, so they try to pretty much medicate you, really just Band-Aid fixes.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, okay. So over your teenage years and, you know, your early 20s, I mean, you had this going on in the background. So, I mean, is this something you really had to think twice about everything you did because it would flare up?
Yeah, it was, it's interesting when I think back to my teen years, my early 20s, there was always an issue, like some type of medical issue going on. It was like this big mystery. And I got diagnosed with fibromyalgia. At one point, they had said they thought I might have POTS. And it's interesting because I had, it flared up really bad when I was 17. I got strep throat. like 7 or 8 times in a row. And I actually had to have emergency surgery. And then I got diagnosed with it. Yeah, it was really intense. And the emergency surgery it was like I was sleeping and I actually stopped breathing because my tonsils were so swollen. And luckily I had someone over because I kept waking up in a panic from it. And I went to the ER and ended up having to have emergency surgery at some point. And then I got diagnosed with post-viral fatigue was the first time that it was taken a little bit more seriously at that time, but it was also kind of like brushed off as, get some rest and you'll feel better at some point soon. But yeah, I definitely had, in the background, there was always chronic fatigue going on. There's always some type of symptom. It went through phases. Like I had a phase where I had a ton of gut issues. I had phases where I had, it was primarily like mood issues. All throughout, I always had fatigue. Around my teenage to early 20 years, it was really treated a lot like it was depression. A lot of the practitioners that I was going to kind of treated it like a mental health condition. So they have said the reason you have chronic fatigue syndrome is because of depression or other mental health issues. So it was kind of, I knew I had something going on, but I, at the time, was under the impression that it was strictly a mental health issue. So I just kind of, unfortunately, pulled myself up by the bootstraps and just pushed through it because that was kind of the guidance that I was getting at the time and the only way that I knew how to deal with that. So I would have periods of time where I always had a lot of stress going on. And I remember there's a period of time where I was working like 2 or 3 jobs and I was in school, and that was the only way I could find to keep my head above water at the time. And I'd have doctors telling me, you just need to stress less. And I'm like, you have no idea what it's like to try to, support yourself. So I always felt like I was kind of caught in a catch-22.
There were times when you were actually a little bit more functional, but even then, you had this kind of dark cloud hanging over you, the chronic fatigue syndrome and all these health issues you're talking about, like that strep throat 7 to 8 times in a row. It's pretty wild. So, over those years, the doctors, they kind of told you it was in your head. They never really, I'm sure like they probably did some testing, but they never really found anything in all of these tests.
I actually had, it wasn't until the last couple of years I got testing. I was really not taken seriously because of my trauma history. Most doctors would just look at me in my chart and say, like, this is definitely a mental health condition. It's not even worth testing anything. And at the time, I didn't always have insurance, so I couldn't always afford healthcare, so I didn't have access to a lot of the doctors. And it was almost like a lot of my late teens and early 20s and mid-20s was saving money for specialists. So I'd just be like working and trying to get through things and putting money aside for different, neurologists or functional medicine doctors or naturopaths. And I really tried really hard. I was always researching too. Like I was always trying to look into what was going on with me. But yeah, I was not taken seriously for quite a long time. And I was really brushed off by different doctors. And I actually, in fact, I had an experienced neurologist who essentially told me that he felt like I was just trying to get attention. And I was, almost like a bottom feeder or something.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy. But you know what? It's not the first time I've heard that, because a lot of these doctors, when things aren't making sense to them or it's something they haven't really seen before, they kind of just figure out the fastest way to get you out the door. They just don't want to deal with you. So, fast forward a handful of years, you actually became a functional medicine health coach, right?
Yep. Yeah, I ended up, it's interesting. The initial reason I wanted to get that certification is because I wanted to be able to argue better with doctors because I was having issues because I was starting to get to where I was unable to get out of bed sometimes, couldn't drive, and I was horrified because I couldn't work. And I didn't know what to do. And I know that generally the practitioners that I had the best luck getting compassion and empathy from were like more holistic or integrative practitioners. So I found a coaching certification program that was a year long that I went through on mind, body medicine, integrative care, and functional medicine.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. So you did that. And then I'm sure that taught you a little bit more about your body. And when did you get that one? The functional medicine health coach certificate?
This was in March 2020.
Got it. Okay. So right when COVID hit, just a handful of years ago. So after that, you're continuing on this recovery journey. what are some of the things you've tried? Like, I know you've tried a lot of different things, right? Maybe just share the lengths you went to try to fix this issue.
Okay.
I know you did a bunch of other programs. I'll let you share it.
Yeah, I've tried quite a few things, and I've approached it from a lot of different angles too. Like I've approached it as like this is a physical condition. I've also approached it with a medical condition, and some of the stuff that I've tried a lot of therapy. I've been a lot of behavioral therapy. I've been a lot of like exposure therapy, like phobia therapy, essentially. I've tried, you name it, functional medicine. I've tried it. I've tried the diets. At one point, I was eating gluten, soy, dairy, nut, egg. Like I was eating like nothing.
Yeah.
You know, I've tried a ton of fad diets. I've tried acupuncture. One time I tried to get hypnotized. I've had shamans dance around me. I've been to
Wow. The shaman dance.
various religious services. I mean, I've really been open to it being from whatever, just so I can get better. Lots and lots of supplements, IVs. I've tried, trying to think of, I tried this therapy once where I had to try to scream out my repressed emotions. It was very awkward.
Yeah.
And exhausting.
Oh, yeah. That's very emotionally taxing on the body. I had someone do that. They told me they did it and they ended up crashing. I'm like, yeah, that's very stressful.
Yeah, I actually had an actual crash after I tried that series of different therapeutic type stuff. This was shortly after the tonsillectomy that I had. I tried a whole bunch because after that I started to crash, and the therapy and the weird techniques kind of pushed me over the edge because they were so taxing.
Yeah, that I could imagine that's super taxing on your nervous system. And I mean, now we know when your emotions get out of control, you know, it's very easy to spiral and for the symptoms to just hit you very hard the more emotional you are. So yeah, the screaming, definitely not a good call for you guys watching. Don't do it. I can't tell you what to do, but I would highly recommend that you don't do it. That's what I would say about that.
Yeah.
So, you know, fast forward a little bit after that, you've tried all these different things. What kind of kept you going? You know, having this for so long and trying so many things, I'm sure it was frustrating at many times. Like, what kept you going? Because clearly now it's obviously you had that thrive mentality, but what was going through your head all these years?
You know, I've had a lot of different jobs and trying to find things that I could work around my symptoms. And I've always ended up working with people. And I've come across a lot of people with complex chronic health conditions. And I think that what kept me going is this like very, sometimes big thought, but sometimes small thought in the back of my head that like other people need help. And from my experience, the doctors aren't going to do it. You know, society isn't going to do it. Someone needs to figure out how to fix this. Because I had seen like when I worked in wellness, when I was a chiropractic assistant and did some coaching, they call it like miraculous recovery. But I've seen people with this and things like this just kind of find their niche and then boom, they're recovered. And I think something else that motivated me is I'm an addict in recovery, and there's a lot of volunteer work I do associated with that. And there's a pretty high amount of people that have illnesses like this and have nervous system dysregulation that I've also seen get better in those realms. And I think there's always just this hope for me that I could try to help people get better because I know so many people who struggle with this, and I also know a fair amount of people who've gotten better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's kind of what kept me going too. You know, there were times when I didn't know how I was just getting up every day. When I say getting up, I mean like waking up every day. I'm like, how am I still doing this? But then I remembered, or I would think to myself, if I do recover, if the slight chance that I do recover, I'm going to be able to help so many people down the road. So Miguel, don't do this just for you. You're doing it for your family, for your friends, and you're doing it for the future people that you would be able to help. And that's what really kept me going. So yeah, I had to find a bigger purpose than just myself.
Yeah.
To help advocate for the people going through this. So that's what led to me starting this YouTube channel too, which then led to the program, which led to us crossing paths and led to...
I'm so glad that it kept you going.
Yeah. So, you know, how did you find out about Recovery Jumpstart? How did you come across my content?
I have a friend named Tammy who was a part of this program, and I met her through another program. We had a group of wonderful women that helped support each other. And I remember the spot that she was in was not the best. And I remember her and I would have these conversations on the phone, like, how are we going to get through this? This is never going to get better, and trying to help each other. And she joined the Recovery Jumpstart, and I started seeing changes quickly with her that just blew my mind. I mean, far beyond what I had seen health coaching, beyond what I had seen, advocating for patients and trying to help people. So it was her testimony, essentially, because I'll be honest, I've watched a lot of YouTube channels and they used to turn me off. Like, I remember going to your channel and being like, there's no way that this is true. I'm like, he is so happy. Like, these people, I don't know about this. And I used to have a hard time watching positive things about people getting better towards before I joined. So I'm so glad that she turned me on to this program, but it was definitely her experience and her sharing what she had gone through.
Yeah. And, it's very common. And I was that person too. I would see, there was just a handful of YouTube videos at the time when I was sick, about 5 years ago. And I would see these recovery stories and I was like, there's no way. And they're saying it's all in your mind and your brain. There's no way. And I was one of those people. And I think it makes sense because people have tried so many things in the past that didn't work. They worked with professionals and doctors. So, I mean, what does some random guy on YouTube know about this? Like, what credentials does he have? But, you did take the leap of faith, and with, Tammy's encouraging words, you gave the program a shot, and, the rest is history from there. And you're still well on your way recovering. But maybe just paint a picture of where you were at when you started the program, because it was a very different Ariel than today, than we have sitting in front of us.
So when I first started, so I had made some progress on my own with another program, but when I first started with this program, I was walking with a cane, and if I didn't walk with a cane, I would get vertigo. It's almost like I had to hold on to something so I didn't lose my sense of balance. I was having heart palpitations like through the day, through the night. My anxiety was just through the roof. I mean, anything that happened, I would think about what happened afterwards for days. I had horrible temperature sensitivity. Like, it's almost like anything extreme at all would just trigger me. Like, I couldn't eat anything too cold. I couldn't eat anything too hot. I couldn't be in a temperature too hot or too cold. I went through a breakup and moved in with my stepdad, and his house was under renovation. And I was having all of these reactions to all these building materials, and it's like, it was just awful. And I remember, I was trying to help my stepdad because I just wanted to get the project done. Like, I was like, let's do this, and I just felt so defeated because I used to have my own cleaning business at one point, and I couldn't paint. I couldn't take a paintbrush. I had like an N95 on, like I had all of this, not an N95, but I had all this gear on so that I wouldn't inhale the paint fumes. And I had a, what are those, Tyvek suit. I had a whole white suit going on that I duct taped to myself because I was scared of getting some of the building materials on my skin because I would get these rashes that were crazy. And I just looked in the mirror and was like, this is not living. So that's where I was at when I first started.
Yeah. And what really stands out was the walking with a cane and the vertigo, because that would limit you from doing a lot of things. And the one thing that did stand out, though, when you did decide to come on board was, you were just committed from day one. You were like, if I do this, I'm going to give it my all. Like, I've tried everything else out there. So if I come on board, I will be 100% committed. And that's when I kind of knew, okay, this is going to be pretty good. So you come on board, and this was it September or October?
I think it was October.
So it would have been October 4th, October, November, December, January. Just over 4 months ago. Almost 5 months. And you've done a lot since then. I'm sure you did stuff that you didn't think you were going to do in a long time.
No.
But, what was probably your first big win, like really big win in the program? I mean, there are so many, but yeah.
I think And it's interesting because this is definitely not the most exciting win that I've had. But when I started being able to go back to the 12-step recovery meetings that I used to, and there's this particular one that was up a set of stairs, and I hadn't gone to it because I couldn't get up the stairs. And I had kind of ditched the cane by that point. And I went and I was thinking, I'm going to bring my cane, and I forgot my cane. And I was like, you know what? This might cause an adjustment period or something, but I'm not letting this hold me back. And I went up those stairs, and I don't know. This sounds so silly, but like it's not like it felt like I like went up the stairs of freedom or something. Like I got up those stairs and was like, oh my god, I went up like 2 sets of stairs. No vertigo, no lightheadedness, no heart palpitations, nothing. And I had this brief moment where I paused and was like, oh my god, this is happening for me. And I went about what I was doing after that. But that's probably the most impactful win that I've had.
Yeah. That's when I think that was probably your first big mind shift. And I remember because you took a picture of that and posted it in the Wins channel. And then everybody was cheering you on. We were like, yeah, that's awesome. And the fact that you did it without the cane, we were like, yes, this is awesome. And she didn't have a crazy flare up after, which means you handled the situation great. And that was probably...
I was kind of like, this is going to really do me over and like, I'm going to be screwed. But it's okay because it's worth it, and it didn't happen.
Yeah. And I truly believe, well, the only reason that would have happened is because you handled the situation very well. You didn't anticipate it after. Maybe you did a little bit, but you didn't let it spiral. Because at this point, I think we were probably 3 or 4 weeks into the program, right? Sometime around there. And what was really cool was your next big win after that, which kind of blew us all away as well. New Year's. Talk about that.
Oh yeah. I went to a nightclub, and not only did I go to a nightclub, so this nightclub was up, and I used to have a lot of issues with stairs and walking, and this still baffles me. This nightclub is up like 3 or 4 different sets of stairs, and each level to it is like 2 sets of stairs. And it was like a New Year's Eve event with like fog and lights and music and dancing and ridiculous drunk people just hollering everywhere. And I went to it. I went with some close friends, and I had like the time of my life. And I was there for a couple of hours. I danced a little bit. I mean, I wasn't like jumping up and down or anything, but I was able to get on the dance floor and hop around a bit. I went up and down the stairs to the different rooms. I had a really good time. And again, that was an experience where I was trying not to anticipate, but I couldn't help but be like, wow, this could be an awful idea, Yeah. And I was kind of just prepared for whatever. But yeah, and after that, it was amazing to me because I had the feeling that I did something I haven't done in a while. And now my muscles are adjusting, as opposed to, wow, I really overdid it. So that was crazy. And the pictures I got were crazy too. Like it looked like I was at like some like huge concert or something.
Yeah, the fog, or I think it was the fog coming out of the machine. It looked wild. And I remember
giant disco ball.
Yep. I remember about a week or 2 before that, you were asking on the call, one of the group calls, like, yeah, I'm thinking of going to this New Year's party. What do you guys recommend? And we were basically like, yeah, maybe bring some earplugs. Maybe bring some shades so the lights aren't as bright. And we were like, sit down as much as you can. Then when we saw the pictures, we were like, yeah, she partied.
I did part here or there, but yeah, I did pretty good controlling it. But yeah, I definitely did. I brought my noise canceling headphones is what I wore, and that really helped with things. And I didn't end up bringing sunglasses because I'll be honest, I look ridiculous. And that affected me.
Yeah, but it was super cool to see, and you've just been building on these small wins. And I do remember one of the weeks as well, you had gone in a car ride in the car to some picnic or something, some lunch with a bunch of friends. It was, I can't remember.
Oh yeah, this was around it was a pumpkin patch.
Yes, it was
I went out that's another problem I used to have a lot, was my back would just freeze up. I get a lot of pain in car rides, or if I had to sit for long periods of time, and I had a lot of anxiety for past accidents and things like that. But yeah, I went on I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, about hour and a half car ride to a pumpkin patch. And this is a location I've never been to there were a lot of people I'd never met. I didn't ask any questions either because I didn't want to anticipate anything. Like I just kind of put the reins in my friend's hands, which is interesting.
Yeah.
And it went fine.
And it was one of those spontaneous events where it was like super last minute. And I remember when we were breaking it down, we were like, yeah, you know why you didn't have so many symptoms? It's because you didn't have time to anticipate all the things that could go wrong. Kind of just went for it. And you're also saying normally you try to control all the variables, maybe bring your own food.
Yeah.
But here you ate whatever they had there.
Yeah, I had pizza. I very distinctly remember that because I used to do that. I used to meal prep like crazy. Yep. I used to do so many different things to try to mitigate symptoms. And I didn't. I just was like, you know what, I'm going to eat what they have, or I'm going to wait and eat when I get home. But I am so not overthinking this. I'm going to have fun.
Which was super cool to see. And so all of these wins, you know, that Ariel compared to the person who joined or, you know, a week prior to joining, very different scenario. You know, your body was so sensitive, not just physically, but like sounds, lights, things like that. You're very hypersensitive to things. So to be able to go to a club with loud music and bright lights,
that was crazy.
all of high emotions, I was like, wow, yeah, she's made it. She's made it out of the thick of things. She's well on her way. And it's super cool to see just the momentum building up. It was a weekend getaway the first time.
So many things in that weekend. I went to a casino. There was a surprise concert. I was like, oh, no, yay.
4 or 5 months ago, that wasn't even on the list of possibilities of things to do at that time, right?
I couldn't travel 2 towns over. I couldn't get in a car and ride for 25 minutes without suffering from severe consequences from that. So it's actually mind-boggling to me. The biggest one I had actually was I went on the biggest water park ride there, and it was actually a really emotional moment for me because I've always been kind of a thrill seeker, or being bedridden and sobbing about how I'll never be able to ride a roller coaster again. This is after a doctor told me that I was essentially just kind of screwed, but I was like, I'll never be able to ride a roller coaster. I'll never be able to go to a water park because I love those types of things. So that's a couple weekends ago. I was ecstatic to be able to ride on a water park ride.
That's awesome.
I went on the biggest ride there, and it was worth the wait. It was really fun.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And it's just a testament of, you know, hanging in there when your adjustment periods get tough. Because, I mean, it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows, right? I think your first or second check-in call, you couldn't even come to the call because you had a migraine. Yeah. I remember.
Yeah, that it was interesting because it had been a while since I had migraines. And it was like, as soon as I started the program, I started getting headaches and migraines. Like some symptoms started slipping away and then other ones started coming in. And that was one was migraines. But yeah, I had to miss a call. I had to, I definitely, there've been some bumps in the road for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but you handled them well and handled them the best you could. And you stayed on track, which was the biggest thing. So for you, you know, being in the program and just over the last 4 months, because you made tons and tons of progress on your own journey, how impactful was it being on calls with other people in a similar situation as you? And just how impactful was it being part of a community?
Very impactful. I think it's probably the most helpful thing about the program, in my opinion, is being around other people going through this and having, like there was the Recovery Jumpstart and then there's the mentorship calls, and having the people and having the coaches both there, I think is so helpful. It really helps not feel alone, and it's the biggest difference. I've tried a couple other rewiring programs, and different programs aimed for helping these types of issues, and that's what's missing there, because I just remember going through those programs and feeling so alone and like, am I doing the right things? Like, what does it look like when other people do this? You know, is this how I should be doing this? You know, am I ever going to meet other people who know what it's like to go through this?
We try to provide a lot of feedback, especially in the Jumpstart phase, the first 6 weeks, just to help people build that momentum. And it takes a lot of touch points, a lot of reminders, a lot of check-ins, but we know that's what it takes to get people out of the trenches. And once you do that, then people's journeys become so much easier, and then you kind of recover intuitively, so that's probably where you're at right now. You could kind of sense where your body's at.
Yeah.
You kind of know when to pull back, when you can introduce activities, because you've been through those progress cycles. But right now, what would you say are the biggest differences from where you are right now versus maybe 6 months ago, physically and mentally?
Wow, there's a lot of differences when I think about it. I'd say one thing is I don't overthink as much. And that's a big thing for me because I used to plan everything. Like I said, I used to meal prep. Like if I went places like meal prep, I would set up like I'm going to go to bed by this time and get up at that time, and I'm going to eat every 2 hours on the dot. And I don't do that stuff anymore. It's almost like the opposite of what you might think someone should do.
Yeah.
I kind of have let go of some of that. And like you had said, a lot of things are intuitive with my body at this point of when to pull back and when to kind of go forward. And it is so relieving to not have to consistently be analyzing. Where am I at? What's my heart rate? Am I able to do this? What are the consequences going to be? And this is probably the first time in my life that I've not had that.
And that's huge. That is huge because that takes up a lot of mental and emotional space in your just capacity overall, in your threshold. So to not have to do that constantly and just 24/7 second guess yourself in a way, it just opens the door to being able to do so much more other activities, so where you're at right now with a new mindset and everything, with all the momentum that you're building up, and you finally found your stride in your own health journey, what would you say to, someone in your shoes where you were maybe a couple years ago, trying everything they could get their hands on, trying all these different solutions, feeling lost, also feeling frustrated and almost to the point of being hopeless? Yeah. What would you tell them, as somebody who's been in that place before?
I definitely would tell them there is hope. Sometimes it's just not conventional, the ways of getting better. But there is hope. It sounds kind of cheesy, but find CFS Recovering and join. That's what I would tell someone in that position, but things can get better. It's not always what things seem like. This might be kind of negative, but the doctors don't know what they're talking about. There's no actual guidance on this. You know what I mean? It's all, here's what we've kind of caught up with. The various guidances don't match up. But there are people who have gotten better from this, and know how to get better and help others get better.
Yeah, totally. And I would also say to anybody watching this, pay attention to the recovery stories, not all these stories of people who stayed sick for 30, 40, 50 years, never got better. Like, you have a choice to place your attention on whatever you want to place it on. So you can choose to focus on all the horror stories, which there's horror stories for everything, or you could choose to focus on the possibilities of recovery. And, with stories like this, with Ariel's progress and other people on my channel and other channels, that's just a fraction of the people who actually come back and share their story with people. So there's so many more people who are recovering that you never even see, you never hear about, because they just move on with their life and they want to put this thing in the rear view mirror and just get away from it, move on to other things, right? So there is absolutely hope. And I think there's more and more recovery stories now that it's getting to the point where it's undeniable that people can get better. And even in our group, our wins channel, like in this past 2 weeks, there's been so many people posting wins, right? It is crazy. Yeah. So I don't think it's a coincidence. I don't think we put a spell on anybody and just convince them to say, hey, just say you're winning. There's actual pictures of people at beach or traveling or, doing things they haven't done in a long time. So, is there anything else you want to share with people who are out there kind of lost and confused and could use some words of encouragement? Is there anything else you want to tell them?
I guess what comes to mind is what we were just talking about with hope. When the past couple of years leading up to finding CFS Recovery, I was really hopeless, and I started getting to the point where I started becoming scared of hope and scared of solutions because I didn't know honestly what I was going to do or where I was going to be if one more thing let me down Or if I saw, I'm honest, if I saw other people getting better from things that I just couldn't do because of my history or because of my economic status and whatnot. And I guess what I would say is that hope is a positive thing, you know, and sometimes when I haven't had or can't have it for myself, I look at stories like I'm telling now, or like is all over the internet and YouTube, and just hold on to other people's hope to get you there. Because hope doesn't have to be scary. It can lead to something, and it can lead to things that you can't even imagine.
Yeah, that's very well said. People do get to a point where they're afraid of hope because they can't risk being let down one more time, because they put so much trust and faith into other people that they don't even trust themselves to make the right decision anymore. So it's such a big thing. You know, guys, continue to have hope. We really appreciate your time, Ariel, and you know, we're so excited to just continue watching you on your recovery journey, just making progress, and we're looking forward to seeing you at the Thriver Summit, or the Thriver Retreat, I mean, in Hawaii, when we all go hiking up that mountain. Yes, the pinnacle of recovery, and that's how you know you've really crossed that finish line, when you can wave that flag at the top of that mountain. So we're excited to see you there when it happens next. But I hope you guys got a lot of value out of this video. Comment down below which part of this video you resonated with the most. You know, this is just an amazing example of somebody who's been dealing with this for not 1 year or 2 years or 5 years, most of her life. So she has been through the thick of it and the trenches. And if she can go from dealing with this for years and trying all these different things to finally gaining traction, then you guys can absolutely do this. You know, as long as you've gotten all other health issues ruled out and the doctors don't know what's going on and they tell you have chronic fatigue syndrome, you know, a diagnosis of CFS or fibromyalgia, it's not a life sentence. It's just a diagnosis, but there are ways to turn that ship around. There are ways to fix it. As you can see right here, this is a perfect live walking example of someone who's going through that. So I hope you enjoyed this video, guys. If you did enjoy this, hit that like button. Like I said, comment down below which part resonated with you the most. And always remember, you are a thriver, and you are just one mind shift away from living life with thriving health. See you in the next video. Thanks so much, Ariel.